We all know the song, "The Times Are Changing," and they certainly are. We're going to talk about the transformation because it's difficult. We're going to talk about the change because it's difficult. I am your RSPA legal Alexa. Ask Bob. Just go to the phone, talk into the microphone, ask Bob any legal question you have, and Bob will answer it. It's as simple as that. What are the trends we're facing in the industry? Let's start with number one, consolidation. It's happening. People are buying people, companies are buying companies. We are seeing the consolidation, and the reason for that's simple. The most important asset you have in your business is your customer base. If someone can take over your customer base, can acquire that customer base, number one, they increase their business, they lower their variable costs, they help spread their fixed costs over more customers, and limit competition to a certain degree, and you see pricing go up. So the consolidation's taking place, people are using it as a growth strategy, and we're also seeing that that consolidation is giving a greater customer base and greater control of that end user, because that's the key, that's the value to your business. Technology and software is the future. The equipment is homogeneous, doesn't matter at all. You know, you think the cab companies saw Uber coming and Lyft coming? No. It's the technology you need to follow and go with. So we have to make sure when we're on the floor, we look for the latest technology and work with it. Generational changes are significant. People, if you're like me at my stage of life and you're not surrounded by younger people with their views and their outlook in life and how they come to market, you're missing it. We need to make sure that we're not thinking in the old school, but we're also embracing the new school as well. Because we're collecting data, and data's the key. You'll hear a lot about that. I was with the major manufacturer I was with in Ramsey. He was talking to me about that he's getting into a furniture line of business. And I said, that is ridiculous. I can tell you it's 16 people that have gone out of business doing that. It's, Bob, I don't care about the furniture. We're putting chips on every single piece of furniture. So when you're in your law firm and you've got that big conference room by X feet by X feet, and you've got that library X feet by X feet, we will be able to tell you how much use each chair gets, each table gets, each whiteboard gets, each book gets, everything else. We'll give you the data, tell you what the cost is, and you can make a decision as to whether or not it is a viable investment or correct. It's the data that's the key. That's the data we're looking for and the efficiencies that we can get. We know the trends. What about the threats? First of all, we're dealing with very sophisticated end users now. These people know a great deal. When they call you for the solution, they're testing you. They're not getting as much information. They're testing you based on the knowledge that they've gotten. The internet can give them anything. What are threats? Employees, their mobility. We'll talk a little bit later how to protect those employees, how to make sure you keep your employees and they keep your information confidential. We'll look at that. How difficult now is it to find qualified technicians and recruit new technicians to do your installations, to do your support and everything else? It's a competitive environment out there. You look at it, one of my son's girlfriends just got a job with Uber. They flew her out there, they put her, she's a lawyer, they hired her. They have 400 lawyers. They want her to work from home. They don't have enough room for her, okay? But, you know, they gave her a package with stock, which was just unbelievable, and got her to move from Chicago to San Francisco because that's where the job was. We know about reduced margins. We see those on a regular basis, so we have to be more efficient ourselves. It's difficult to grow. And the last one up there I want to talk to you about just briefly, that ransomware. We've had 2 of our members who have been hit by ransomware. It can happen to you, and don't ignore it. Ransomware is a wonderful business for the criminals. It's probably even more lucrative now than PCI was a few years ago. There was Grand Crab, was one of the ransomware things they used. It netted the criminals, they estimate $2 billion. They thought they were going to retire after that, but no, now they came out with Our Evil. And Our Evil is the new ransomware that's going on. If you get hit by that, or if your system's vulnerable and they can get through your system to your customers, it's a real problem. There's an opportunity there for you to talk to your end users and make sure that they are protected just as well as you're protected. Don't be mistaken that your top line revenue is this level and you've maintained it or grown it. I want you to look at that top line revenue. I want you to dissect that top line revenue. I want you to determine how much of that revenue is coming from your efforts or coming from commissions or rebates or money paid to you by someone else who may have better control of that end user than you have. Don't be mistaken that good business is good, revenue is good, but ladies and gentlemen, you may be losing control along the way. Let's talk about managing your business. I talk with you and I share with you the potholes on the road to success. You can't comply with every law out there. Us lawyers make sure of that. That's how we maintain our business relations. It is impossible to comply with everything. It's just hopeful that you don't stumble on things that are too difficult. So, what do we start with? Ban the box. What's that all about? Is that the boom box on the CTA in Chicago? Those are banned, but that's not what I'm talking about. In your employment application, there's usually a box that says, have you ever been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years? We're going to take those out. If you go with one of our new programs with GMS, with their HR programs, they can help you with that. But on our templates, we're eliminating that box because you're not allowed at the application stage any longer to ask about past criminal convictions. You can during the interview process as you get further along. If you're hiring a CFO, it might be nice to know if they've been convicted of bank fraud or anything else. It sort of helps you understand where it is. Okay. Compensation history, and I'll show you a list of jurisdictions that have entered these things. You can't ask about compensation anymore. It's not a bona fide occupational qualification. And it's thought that by asking what compensation was at a previous position, that in fact you are limiting the ability of someone to increase their compensation and also keeping minorities down in terms of their compensation. So it's gone. You can't ask about what you earned in your last job. And I'll warn you, someone might volunteer that. Someone says, what are you looking for? What's going on? Well, my last job, I made $28,000. Oh, I'm sure you're proud of that, but we judge it based on your credentials. We judge it based on your abilities. We judge it based on our pay scale, what's there. So you can't ask for the compensation anymore. Hairstyle. Do you believe this one? The Crown Act in California. It bans discrimination against afros, braids, locks, twists. I don't even know all these things, okay? But you can't make an employment decision based on someone's appearance. And if they have a hairdo out to here, you're not going to put down, afro hairdo, we're not going to hire. It's discriminatory, it's wrong, it's inappropriate, and it's now illegal in California and other places. Now here's one that's more difficult to deal with, okay? And that's marijuana. Medical marijuana exists in a number of states, and recreational marijuana is coming to existence in even an additional number of states, okay? How do you manage marijuana? Well, in New York City, starting in 2020, you can't even pre-employment test for marijuana. You're not allowed to do that anymore, okay? Because the same way you can't test if someone, a breathalyzer when they come for a job, you can't do that either. You have to make reasonable accommodations for medical marijuana, and in terms of recreational, someone can't come to the office stoned and do their job. That would be inappropriate, the same way as someone came and they were intoxicated to do their job. But how do you know and how do you do it? So this is an area that's developing. Marijuana is still illegal on the federal level, so if you have federal contracts, they can put provisions in there having certain requirements and testing. But be careful. This is one of those areas where you're going to use RSP Alexa Bob so we can look at your state requirements and find out what's happening. The point I want to make here, and with some of these things, you need to keep your finger on the pulse of your business. I don't care if you have 5 employees or you have 200 employees. You're going to delegate a lot of things, but you need to insert checks and balances in all these areas. Make sure that you can. I have a lot of calls for you for non-disclosure agreements. Just don't sign them, look at them, and make sure. If you're looking at a consolidation opportunity, I want to make sure that you dribble out information, you give information in the aggregate, not specifics, that you're more cautious with it. Make sure that at the end when they have to return all the information or that it has to be destroyed, it includes analysis, any Excel spreadsheets are created, or anything else. Don't take NDAs for granted. If you're entering one, have it reviewed. I'll review it for you. That's part of your benefit. I don't mind doing that. They're usually only 2 pages. It's the 4-pagers that are sort of ridiculous. But I've seen just about all of them. I'm happy to do that for you. So there's severance agreements. And RSPA provides you with a template for a severance agreement, but you have to make sure it's done correctly. There are some state law requirements as well. We'll try to help you with those, but we have the template. Number 1. Is a person in a protected class. If they're over 40, they're protected. Their gender may be protected. Their race may be protected. Their religion, their military status. There's a whole number of them. If they're in a protected class, you have to make sure that that severance agreement addresses that protected class and waives any claims or conditions that come over there. You need that specific language. Now, you've seen these agreements. They usually say you got 21 days to make a decision, and then after you do it, you got 7 more days to say, hey, I changed my mind, whatever. But sometimes we put a severance agreement out there, and the severance agreement gets negotiated. How does that affect the 21-day period or whatever time period you have in that document? The law says that if the employee says, okay, now we have a new document, I want to start another 21 days, they can. If they don't say that, then the existing time frame continues. So that's a little tricky play to be involved with, something that has to be documented from your side, but make sure that this severance agreement is well done, because you don't want to fund their litigation against you or the case that they have against you. Legal traps with social media. If you have a social media present, you need to regulate it. You need to have a policy in place for your social media. Social media is the key to the future. It's the way to communicate with the public. It's the way to generate interest in terms of what you're doing, what your solutions are, if you have a blog, whatever else it's going to be. But make sure, authorize people who can post on it. Our law firm, we have one person hired who does all our social media. For all the attorneys, for everything else, puts newsletters, announcements, everything else out there. The only person that's allowed to touch and go on there is that person. Make sure that your media is monitored. If there's an adverse statement by a end user or someone else, a former end user, make sure you address it. Whenever when you go to TripAdvisor and they say, I'm staying at the Marriott River Center, they're doing construction, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, it sounded like the atomic bomb went off, okay? And the manager comes on, dear guest, we're sorry that your stay was interrupted. But they answer it, so they don't ignore it. The worst thing you can do is ignore that. Have a policy on what is prohibited, defamation, copyright infringement, anything along those. Discipline the violations, give your people some training, and make sure that you have the ownership of the accounts. I'm a big believer, and it may be a little more work for you and a little more administration, but I'm a firm believer that your employees should have company-owned cell phones, mobile phones. And the reason for that is when they leave, you have the number and retain the number as opposed to the individual. All our salespeople, all our technicians, they give their personal, if you got a problem, just call me directly, I'll be out here, I'll take care of it, whatever you need. And then when they leave, that number is still with the customer. But if you own the phone, they can't use it and won't do that. I've been practicing law, ladies and gentlemen, for 46 years. I'm in my 71st year. And I want to sort of cut back and enjoy some other things in life. So I've worked out with RSPA that on December 31st, 2020, I'm going to be able to retire. So I'm going to miss all of you. I'm going to miss the opportunities. No. I miss all of you. But you've got about 18 months to abuse me. Please, do what you can to abuse me. Do what you can to use me. Take advantage of the RSPA things that are available to you, the services. The knowledge bank that John and his team have created are just incredible. So let's kick off a great show. Let's have a wonderful show. And let's make sure that everyone here at Retail Now gets out.